Welcome Boombox fans to the review of the Sanyo C9 portable component system. Manufactured between 1982 and 1984, this multi-component system was Sanyo's response to JVC's PC5, Hitachi J6, and Sansui CP7 portable systems. It was the peak for Sanyo as far as powerful portable systems go. Much like the others, there was some confusion when first seen, as it too had a very similar, if less powerful yet more prolific baby brother in the Sanyo C9 and its clones. Sanyo's approach was a bit different than others, however, in that it had a separate tuner like the JVC PC5, but also its power supply was totally independent of the other components. The power supply also housed the battery compartment. Sony would later follow this approach later with the FH7 series, with a dedicated power block and a rechargeable setup that would allow you to take the system out portably. Sanyo's approach to combining of components was similar to JVC's at the time, as well as utilizing steel brackets to tie the units together. It should be noted, however, that Sanyo's approach was and remains the best when fully assembled. Sanyo utilized two full-width brackets, which also have rigid plastic frames attached to the components with 6 robust screws on each side, each component accepting 2 screws from the bracket. The two-piece assembly, that being the bracket, comes with cloth inserts and rub strips for the front and rear to avoid scuffing the speaker cabinets. The speakers latch on via a closely spaced wide hook assembly which mounts to the speaker itself. Once the speakers are set, the handle hooks into place and the locking mechanism built into the handle is slid into the lock position. Once assembled, the unit feels as if it were one solid piece with no, if any, movement. All told, the assembled components are as follows: the Sanyo C9T tuner, C9D cassette amplifier, C9P power supply, and the C9S speaker system. The C9 came in 2 flavors, the more common silver and the rare dark gray version. Both versions came with nicely appointed chrome trim to cover and hide the wires in the back of the unit. The total weight is 28 pounds. For distribution, the tuner came in 2 flavors. In the US market, tuners came with medium wave, that would be AM, and FM only. All other markets received tuners which added 2 shortwave bands. A nice feature was the presence of a fine tuning knob to help lock in your favorite station. This proved to be especially helpful as I live in the country and getting those low power stations can be difficult at times. The tuner, though fairly strong, in comparison does not quite match up to the JVC component units, but it is very close. A real drag is that Sanyo took the route that many manufacturers of the era did at that time, electing to forego a proper tuning window with needle for graphics on the face. What you get is a slot with a red LED lit marker, bracketed by chrome accents to follow. After a few minutes fiddling with the tuner, I started imagining facing the Cylons from the original Battlestar Galactica. The FM stereo indicator sits at the upper right of the tuner. I should note that personally, I wish it were a green LED, but that's because every LED on the entire setup is red. It does do its job just fine as it is. Also worth mentioning is that the tuner dial, though weighted, doesn't have quite the feel found on some other high-end units. Not bad, just didn't have that feel. Buttons to select the bands are the push and catch type, whereby pushing in one releases the other for switching and catches to maintain the selected band. The tuner is designed to sit atop the other components and connects from a built-in dongle containing a 6-pin DIN type plug. This supplies power and also provides the signal path to the amp in a neat single cord. Some may criticize, stating that the tuner can't be used elsewhere, but who really does that with these type units? And besides, it beats the mangled mess of the PC5, and come to think of it, Marantz PH32, with its RCA and power cables coming out of the back. There's also terminals for external antennas, and overall, the experience, less the slotted tuner window, was enjoyable. The FM signal-to-noise ratio is 80 decibels. Total harmonic distortion is 0.5% at 1 kHz. Stations were loud and clear, and stereo separation was quite pleasing on FM. Signal-to-noise ratio on AM is 50 decibels. AM stations pulled exceptionally well at night, which I found to be a nice surprise. The shortwave bands performed acceptably, given that the primary market for these units won't have a lot of customers using these bands unless they were curious. As far as the tuner goes, Sanyo did very well here. The cassette section is well put together and very solid. Features expected at this price point are present, such as record mute, music search, AMSS or automatic music search system in Sanyo speak, metal tape capability, and Dolby B. There are some bones of contention, however, one being the door mechanism. Nowhere on this unit does it indicate soft eject, and Sanyo delivers on that lack of promise. I truly thought something was wrong with the unit, or maybe me, but it was neither. Why they didn't include a buttery smooth eject mechanism is and may forever be a mystery. The deck also better not break, because I'll lose the amp as well. At least on other competing units, I'd still have the receiver or the tuner, or at least the integrated amp. Another bone is that this is a mechanical solenoid controlled deck, and take-up tends to sound a bit clunky when engaging, no matter how well oiled and tight it is mechanically. That said, however, tape playback was fuss-free, and rewinding and fast-forwarding was smooth and quick. Sometimes so quick I thought it would snap a tape. But there was no reason to fear, as the deck also featured auto stop in playback, record, and the aforementioned functions of rewind and fast-forward. During playback, the assembly is very quiet, and you will not know it's running at lower volumes. Signal-to-noise ratio is 64 decibels with metal tape and Dolby on. For a portable unit, that's not too shabby. As a matter of fact, for its era, it's outstanding. To the average listener, they won't notice because this is a pretty good sounding deck no matter what in its own right without Dolby and using regular bias tapes. Recording using Dolby and metal tapes produce solid, warm recordings I wouldn't be ashamed of passing on to a friend to record from. The music search function was very accurate, even with the smallest of gaps between recordings. You can skip up to 3 songs rewinding or fast forwarding. This deck never slipped up and proved like many Sanyo portable decks, it is as solid as a concrete block performance-wise. And though I may have groaned about it, being tied to the same chassis as the amp brings some advantages. Speaking of the amp, this is where the C9 really shines. Using twin TA2737P ICs, one for each channel, this unit is rated for 17 watts RMS continuous, 30 watts RMS peak, each side. These are stout. I mean really stout numbers. On the test bench with a 1 kHz test tone and a 6 ohm dummy load applied, I was able to get 21 watts continuous before clipping. Theoretically, these numbers could be much greater with a 4 ohm load, which the chips are rated to handle. It seems like we have here some sort of more, I guess you would call it, Japanese tradition of underrating equipment akin to what they did, and I think they still do today with their car's horsepower, via a gentleman's agreement, of course. Though tempting, with a 4 ohm load, despite the beefy heatsink, there just isn't enough room to breathe in the chassis, and it's plenty damn loud with the stock 6 ohm speakers. The preamp section runs clean with no signal leakage between sources. And speaking of the preamp section, the controls are well, I guess what you get when you cram so much into a package this size. You'll quickly be reminded of ye old car stereo with small knobs for bass and treble adjustment, as these are combination rheostats. The same holds true for the volume and balance controls. Don't get me wrong, they do their job very well and have nifty centering indents to let you know when you're set flat or set to balance. They work very well. The function selectors work as the band selectors do for the tuner with positive clean action. The loudness function has a reaction range of positive 8 decibels at 100 Hz and positive 4 decibels at 10 kHz. Tone controls have a reaction range of ±8 decibels for bass at 100 Hz and ±8 decibel for treble at 10 kHz. The unit comes with a multi-purpose line-in phono input. A switch on the rear allows selection between the two. Now I may be a bit fussy about this arrangement, as others have dedicated switches. but the apparent logic makes sense. At the time these units were released, most portables had a phono stage only, requiring an attenuator to play line level sources. Adding line-in ability via a switch on the back was the simple answer, as the likely outboard source to be plugged in would be a turntable at that time. This also made sense from an economy standpoint. And where would the dedicated line-in switch go, as the chassis was plenty packed? Of course, and of note, is that Sanyo did provide a line out to allow the unit to serve as a preamp or phonoamp. Headphone and microphone with mixing control inputs are on the front of the unit. A quick note on the outboard power supply. It is a robust little beast that gets the job done without strain, providing plenty of juice into the hungry amp stage. Twin fuses stand at the ready to protect the goods. At the front of the supply unit is the power switch and the latch to access the battery compartment. 9 D cells will do you here, but get ready for, like others in this category, the Telefunken Hi-Fi Studio 1 comes to mention, not so much power. Aside from batteries, the unit can be powered with a proper car adapter as well. Power consumption is rated at 80 watts. However, when driven hard, this little beast did get over 90 watts of power consumption going. I guess it's just a matter of what you're doing with it at the time as to how thirsty it really is. Regarding the overall sound, well, this is a tale of two cities. I'll get it out of the way and state that the stock 6.5-inch woofer, 1.5-inch tweeter speakers provided cannot match the power the C9 cranks. How they managed to rate these at 30 watts maximum power, the speakers that is, I'll never know, and it's likely you won't either. These speakers pulled a no mas as Roberto Duran. Let me make sure I correct myself here. They pulled a no mas as Roberto Duran did when Sugar Ray Leonard, in this case Sugar Ray Leonard being the TA2737Ps, was beating the hell out of them as the volume of the crowd went up. The supplied cones are standard Sanyo fare and not worthy of what the C9 can do. They sound better than okay at normal levels, but don't go above that. This would explain the spring clips for speaker wire on the back of the amp, and why the stock speakers have none. I think Sanyo knew that these would get plenty of shelf time given the weight. Like others, it appears that the supplied speakers were meant to be a secondary option at home. It is because of this I modified mine by installing pure polypropylene woofers and dome tweeters. The enclosures were intended to be acoustic suspension types. That extra ring next to the tweets is a fake hole, so don't get excited. It's not a bass port. To address this, I added a port in the rear, tuning the tubes by checking various links to avoid the farting that can occur with bass reflex ports improperly designed. I also added proper spring clips for the wires. The speakers are 6 ohm to match factory resistance, and now we're cooking. With the new speakers installed, properly dampened, you get a punch that just may loosen some teeth. Not only that, at lower levels, vocals are clean, high smooth, and bass tight. And at higher levels, the same. Now I'm impressed. My listening area was about 6 feet away to stay in the sweet spot, and the unit was at ear level. I played a few of my favorite test tracks, Wizards in Winter by Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Roundabout by Yes, Sound is Everything by Chico Mon, the Rich Medina remix, and Say, Say, Say by Alicia Myers. My ears were quite pleased with all settings flat. I could listen for hours with no fatigue. When driven hard, the unit performed admirably, only getting slightly warm, which let me know there's a lot more room to go with those amp chips. And it has quite a beefy heatsink to boot. So there's probably a little more reach down in the Sanyo C9 that has yet to be discovered. With all the above being said, this beast, a pit bull if you will, can definitely please. It's clearly worth the investment, and like anything, it has its flaws. But this unit should have a feature spot in any collection. If you see one, get one. And if you can't, well, hold out hope. I recommend the speaker spot, but that's about it. If you choose to keep the originals, as long as you're not trying to blow out the neighborhood, well, they're going to be fine. But I have a feeling that those reading or hearing this are greedy for volume. Like me. I think the highs we're going to focus on today is that it has a rock solid build, it's rock solid sound with better speakers, rock solid power, stout ICs, excellent tuner performance, and silent, once it's engaged, smooth cassette deck. Some of the lows: the peep show slot tuner dial window, clunky sounds when the deck engages. The speakers. Oh, did I mention the factory speakers? Well, only when cranked. I hope you guys enjoyed today's review of the Sanyo C9. What we're going to do now is actually play one of the songs that I used for testing. This will be Sound is Everything by Chico Man, the Rich Medina remix. Enjoy.
It's close to your heart. It's close to your heart.
And there you have it, folks. The Sanyo C9. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I can tell you, this is one of my favorite boom boxes. This is Oldskool 69 signing off from the basement. Look out for another review coming soon from Oldskool 69.